everybody. There we go. And welcome back. My name is Kari, and today I am doing my, not June, we haven't hit that yet, May. That's the month. May wrap up. Yeah. I'm doing great. So, I read 10 books in May, which I am not mad about, and I think I read maybe half-ish. I don't know, 2-3 of the books that were actually on my May TBR. But I'm getting better at that again. So, it is what it is. I seem to go in cycles as far as how many books I read on my TBR. Be it none, or all of them, and then some, whatever. It's interesting. First one I read was How to Train Your Dragon by Cressida Cowell. I listened to this on audiobook, and it was fun. Thinking about it now, at the time I gave it 4 stars. I'm gonna put it down to 3 stars. It's a good book. It's solid. I don't know that it's anything special. And it's sort of, I don't know, Toothless and Hiccup aren't as lovable as they are in the movies. So that's fun. But again, it's a solid book about dragons. I don't think I'll continue the series. At least not unless I read them in physical form. I think that would be more fun for me. Next one I read was 18 Tiny Deaths, The Untold Story of Francis Lee and the Invention of Modern Forensics by Bruce Goldfarb. This I read on Kindle for my book club. It was actually fantastic. I gave this one 4 stars, maintain that rating. It's not life-changing by any means. However, it does change the way I watch my murder mystery shows. If you don't know me, I watch a lot of murder mysteries. I don't know why, but they're very soothing to me. NCIS, Miss Fisher's murder mysteries, love Miss Fisher. Death in Paradise, very fun. Majorca Files. There's also a trend here in that they tend to be, you know, not American. There are a couple good ones. Murder, She Wrote. Murder, She Wrote's fantastic. I love that one. But the more modern ones, yeah. Hawaii Five-0, the original, not the remake. The original's the only good one. I did actually hit record on this, right? I don't know why, but for some reason apparently my brain decided I hadn't hit record. Anyway, 18 Tiny Deaths. So Frances Lee was a woman in the 30s who got married and then divorced. She was somewhat liberal, but definitely progressive in her views. Hence the divorce. Her husband was the guy who started the Civil War at Fort Sumter, or the son of the guy who started the Civil War. Not great either way. But at any rate, she grew up with money. And so she got bored after she divorced. I mean, you hire a nanny to watch your kids. You don't really have anything to do because everybody else cleans your house and does everything for you. She got really interested in the science of murder, basically, what we call forensic science now. And so she started trying to start a forensic pathology program at Harvard, because that was sort of the university of her dreams, but she couldn't go because it was Harvard in the 1880s at the time. She did, however, begin endowing Harvard with a ton of money, and she had a partner, mentor, both, who was a dude, which helped, and knew seemingly everything about forensic pathology. So she basically said, alright, he gets a teaching post and I will pay for it. You have a library of just his books on this subject, and you cannot ever combine it with the other Harvard science libraries. They did eventually, because Harvard is an ass. That kind of stuff, but she gave them millions. And started the change from coroner to medical examiner within the United States. There's still far fewer Ennies than coroners. But it led to a lot of good discussion. We sat there for 3 hours just talking about everything under the sun that stemmed from this book. It was fantastic. And she built 18 little dioramas on a 1 to 12 scale of various different murder scenes that actually happened, so that the students could examine the crime scenes as closely as possible without interfering. And several years down the road, they are still used for study now, but they are not open to the public, which is unfortunate because I would love to see them. She was an amazing woman. We all did acknowledge that having millions of dollars to throw at a problem definitely helps it. I mean, really, if I had a couple million to throw at problems, whew, could solve a lot of problems. But it's a fantastic book. It's very well written. There were some emotional elements missing, which was also part of the 4-star rating. It was written by a man, and so there were parts, like, he didn't really mention her kids or her divorce or how she felt about any of that. How she felt about being shafted by Harvard multiple times, although Harvard got shafted in the end because sucker, she didn't leave him any money in her will. It was great. We all laughed. Stuff like that. So I think had it been written by a woman, there might have been a little bit more in there. However, I will say I don't know that because I don't know what sources Goldfarb used for this, and I don't know if Lee put her feelings in any of this. From the way he portrays her, she seems very composed and stoic, just generally speaking, so I don't know that we would have gotten a ton out of her letters or her diary anyway. But, my personal opinion, and now we're moving on. Let's see, I have all of those. Oh yes, Feeding You Lies was the next one I read that I don't have, and that is by Vani Hari. This is a nonfiction. It's a self-help book. It's all about the processing of the food and the toxins and chemicals and shit in your food, specifically in the States. Basically, if you go out of the States, you're going to eat healthier food. The States are just pathetic and useless, and I don't know why we're here. But that's irrelevant. I gave this 3 stars. I think it was a good book. She's self-righteous, which I don't love, and very much biased. I get that that's kind of, the point, and it's a nonfiction book. Everybody comes at things with their own biases, explicit and implicit. But it felt like she wasn't even trying to tone it down at all. Also, may I just point out that her editor is fucking terrible. There were 2. One, it should have been spelled event, and it was even. I don't know what kind of editor doesn't catch that. And second, and more egregious, at one point, the book says, in 2106. It meant fucking 2016. The hell do you not catch that? And this was not a self-published book, I would just like to point out, because I am more forgiving of self-published books, because I get that staring at your own stuff for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours will send you over the edge. This was not self-published. She had an actual paid person go through and miss 2106. Anyway, yes, that was part of my rating, because if it is that bad, then clearly somebody's not doing their job. Just like to point that out. All you have to do is double check all the years. It's not hard. It's not hard. I promise. Oh my god. And how do you... Anyway, I'm gonna stop because I'm just gonna work myself up and I don't want to do that. So I gave it 3 stars because it was just very biased and self-righteous, and I didn't love that. She had some good points, and there are definitely so many problems with the amount of processing that the food in the States goes through. So I like the facts, I like the science behind it, but the bias and the self-righteous and the bad editing, I could have lived without. Then I read The Girl with the Louding Voice by Abi Dare. This is a book about a girl from rural Nigeria who is about to be married off to an old man, doesn't want to be, so finds a way out of it. It's a story of a girl trying to escape, essentially, her rural roots, and I didn't love the narrator, largely because her accent was Nigerian accented English, which is great and fine, and it's a gorgeous accent. But when you're trying to do something else and listen to it, at least for me, it's not an accent that I hear every day, so it's not an accent that my brain has learned to process quite as quickly as, say, British English or American English. And that's on me, I know this, but it did affect my enjoyment because I had to concentrate a lot more and I didn't have time to concentrate all that much at the time I was reading it. So I gave it a 3 stars because it is a solid book and I overall enjoyed it. I did think it could have been shorter. It felt very long and there were parts that I didn't really care about. I didn't connect to the main character all that much. I connected more to some of the side characters. But I do want to read this book in hard copy to see if it would improve my connection to it, because I think it would, to be able to read it in my own head. But that will happen at some later time. And then the last book that I read, which is upstairs and I don't feel like going to get, is Virtual War by Gloria Straznitzky. It's a science fiction. It's 148 pages. It's basically Ender's War short version. I also gave it 3 stars. It's a solid read. Nothing special. It's a solid Ender's Game-esque science fiction. So take that as you will. Right, and now the books I read in hard copy. First we have The Lost Book of the Grail by Charlie Lovett. Oh my god, this was amazing! So this is a book about a crotchety old man in the fictional town of Barchester. Fun fact, based on Barchester Towers, which I read earlier this year with Margaret Pinard, channel down below. Didn't love Barchester Towers. The descriptions were just painful. But, so crotchety old man, a young American woman comes in, and by old I mean he's 40. Young American woman comes in to digitize all the medieval manuscripts. It turns out they both have a love for the lost Holy Grail. Somehow, the main character believes the Grail is connected to the lost book of Saint Evolda, who is a Saxon saint with a priory based in Barchester, founded in Barchester, both. It's fantastic. I love how the author goes back and forth in history. So he starts with the founding of Saint Evolda and then goes to modern day in 2016 and back and forth all through history. I love how he connects the saint to the Grail. It's not anything. I love the weaving in of Arthurian legend and history and modern day and the relationships in this. It's really fun. I will say the side relationships are not as developed, but that's because of the main character. He's sort of he's a curmudgeon. So he's very much so stuck in his medieval manuscripts, doesn't really pay terribly much attention to anybody outside his own head. So I think the author did a good job at describing that, but I loved this book, 5 stars. Then we have Murder at Will by Gail Feichtinger and John DeSanto and Gary Waller. This is a book, nonfiction, about the murders at Glensheen Mansion here in Duluth. So in 1977, Elizabeth Congdon, who was one of the daughters of Chester Congdon, who built the mansion in the early 1900s, was killed in her bedroom and her nurse was murdered on the stairs. John DeSanto was the prosecutor at the time. He is now a senior judge in northern Minnesota, and Gary Waller was the chief investigator at the time. I don't know how much to say. It's a really good book. It puts the facts very clearly. It acknowledges the bias of obviously being written with the prosecutor and the chief investigator at the time as primary sources and co-authors. But it's fantastic. I didn't know 98% of this. I knew somebody had died at Glensheen. I didn't know who, when, why, where, how. So it was really cool to be able to read this, and having been to the mansion go, oh, so that's where that happened. That's what that's talking about. Oh, that painting there. I love that kind of stuff. If you were looking for a true crime story, this is definitely one to check out. Then I finally finished my sister pick from March, which was Istanbul by Thomas Mann. This is a nonfiction about Istanbul. I gave this 4 stars. It's good. I think it's just too short, honestly, and the more modern it got, the shorter it got. So he focuses a lot more on the historical aspects, and I think that's not fine, actually. If you're gonna write a nonfiction book about a city and say that you're just gonna give a brief overview of the last 2,000 years, great, but then give an equal overview of the last 2,000 years. Just as much has happened in the last 100 as happened in 0 to 100 AD. You know, we've had colonialism seriously impact things, and several world wars come to mind, all of which impacted Istanbul quite a lot. It's a city that's been standing for thousands and thousands of years, and I don't think he did it justice. At least not in the end. I think he definitely did it justice in the first half to 3/4, and then it just got too short. Again, I acknowledge he said it was going to be an overview, and he did a decent job at that, but I had a problem with the shorter it got, so 4. And then I read All Systems Red by Martha Wells, which is the first in the Murderbot Diaries, gifted to me by Abby from Abby of Pelennor, channel link down below. Novella about a half-human, half-robot creation called Murderbot. And that's all I'm going to say because it's cute and dark and deadly and it's amazing. I do have the next 2 also gifted to me from Abby, so I will be reading those coming up. And I gave that one, I believe, a 4 or 4.5. Possibly a 5. And then the last book, and possibly my favorite of the month, was The Never Tilting World by Ren Gebecco. Yay! So in this world, the world broke about 17 years ago. There have always been twin goddesses, and each goddess has a daughter. Half the world is really hot, half the world is really cold, and they live in the middle of this. So one goddess rules like the top of it, right near the middle, and one rules the bottom, kind of right near the middle, because that's the only place they can survive. I loved this. The writing and the world building and the... oh, amazing! On top of that, there's female-female, male-female romances and relationships, and just there's disability rep, there's mental health rep, like you name it, it's got it. So that was just a cherry on top, but this book is phenomenal. Go check it out. 5 stars. Those are the books I read in May. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.